This courage presentation helps you to understand the disempowerment drivers causing the child protection challenges happening in your community, and then to develop empowered solutions to solve them. Now that we have identified, prioritized, and understood all of the child protection challenges in our community, we need to understand what is driving these challenges, specifically the disempowerment drivers that are enabling child protection challenges in our community. Some useful tools to help you think through the empowered solutions to your child protection challenges include the Courage Disempowerment and Empowerment Cards, which are the purple and yellow packs, or the A1 Courage Empowered Child Protection poster, or watching this Courage movie or presentation, all of which you can download from the Courage Child Protection website. The purpose of this exercise is to empower your participants and community to solve your child protection challenges in an empowered rather than a disempowered way. We do this by using love, understanding, and focusing on creating harmony rather than hate, anger, and violence to solve conflict. If we can help to build loving and peaceful families, we will create loving and peaceful communities and societies that are resilient and strong and defined by their care and support of each other. So how do we identify our disempowerment drivers and move them into empowered solutions? Let's start with the end in mind by looking at the courage drivers of individual and community empowerment. To understand how empowered you are, try to answer each of these questions. Firstly, what are your values and beliefs? Who do you partner with and how do you partner them? What is your level of self-esteem and self-worth? How are you building love, harmony, and a sense of togetherness in your life and community, rather than getting everyone to compete against each other for your favor? What is your vision and purpose? How do you continue to build this through ongoing knowledge and insight? And finally, how are you turning all of these good things into real and tangible actions every day? As the picture illustrates, if you want to grow a tree tomorrow, you have to plant a seed today. If you can answer all of these questions comfortably, you're pretty empowered, but this is often not the case. When exploring each of the child protection challenges that exist in the world today, we were not surprised to find that each problem was driven by the opposite of our empowerment drivers. Instead of values, we found violence and inequality. Instead of partnership, we found isolated individuals who are vulnerable to exploitation. Instead of high self-esteem, we found low self-esteem. Instead of love, we found abuse, hate, and a lack of forgiveness. Instead of vision, we found apathy, and often substance abuse and addiction. Instead of knowledge and insight, we found ignorance. And instead of action, we found complete inaction and neglect. In every community, their child protection challenges are driven by different disempowerment drivers. In some communities, the high level of sexual abuse and rape is driven by high levels of violence and inequality. Issues such as prostitution, child trafficking, and child labor are driven by individuals who want to exploit children. And children who have low self-esteem are vulnerable to gangsterism and mental health challenges. Corporal punishment and the many forms of physical, emotional, and sexual abuse often flourish in an environment where abuse has been normalized. The first step in this exercise is to take all of our high-priority child protection challenges and try to map them to the disempowerment drivers that we think are the cause of these problems in our community. Ask yourself, how do these challenges show up in my community? One challenge could fall across several disempowerment drivers, but try to think about which driver is most relevant in your local community context. Once you have linked your child protection challenges to a particular disempowerment driver or group of drivers, you can then look to the opposite empowerment driver to think about how to solve the problem. Instead of solving murder or attempted murder through creating more violence and inequality, we need to ask ourselves, how do we start to create values and a sense of shared commitment to those values? Instead of solving abuse with more abuse, we need to explore how we can use love. Instead of shaking our heads at the ignorance that drives late termination of pregnancy or harmful cultural practices, we must start to think about how to empower people with knowledge and learning. We will now go through each of these disempowerment and opposite empowerment drivers to understand them better. Violence and inequality relates to a breakdown in the rules of society, which leads to anarchy, fear, and communities in complete survival mode. This can happen when there are high levels of social unrest, riots, violence, war, discrimination of all forms, conflicting belief systems, and excessive poverty and inequality. In challenges driven by poverty and inequality, where societal structures have broken down, the solution lies in building shared values and a belief set. This is the foundation of safety and security for communities. It also ensures that there is a shared focus on providing for the basics a family needs, including food and shelter, building a strong sense of family and community belonging, ensuring that law and order prevails, in an environment of equality and strong societal leadership, where all citizens know and agree what is right from what is wrong. Exploitation often takes place where individuals are isolated and have no partnerships or sense of belonging to a family or community. This can lead to child protection challenges such as child trafficking, child labor, child prostitution, and pornography, broken families and broken communities where there is no trust or respect, and often high levels of corruption and abuse of power. Where child protection challenges of exploitation exist, the solution lies in partnerships, where community members work together with mutual trust and respect for each other. To ensure good partnership, one needs good communication, strong families with extended family support, shared community values, and government and community social partnerships driven by mutual trust and respect. The disempowerment driver of low self-esteem is a result of having no self-respect or sense of personal responsibility. It can lead to a range of child protection challenges such as exposure to gangsterism and bullying. Children with low self-esteem often have no sense of focus or direction, no sense of personal identity. They often believe they have no choices in life and frequently feel shame for who they are and the choices they make. To address low self-esteem, we need to build high self-esteem in children, where they respect themselves and take personal responsibility for their lives and the choices they make. The first step in building a sense of self is to help children define and develop a strong personal identity, to teach them to make good decisions for themselves, and to help them gain focus and direction. This will lead to personal achievement and ensure that they take responsibility for their lives and to care for themselves and others. The disempowerment driver of abuse is typified by hate, anger, fear, and resentment. In environments where abuse is dominant, people tend to use violence to solve conflict. They speak of hate and revenge and an inability to forgive others. Abuse is often driven by fear and anger. The solution to abuse is love and creating an environment of care, compassion, empathy, and forgiveness. In this environment, people use love rather than violence to solve conflict. Empathy is encouraged and strong, loving families and communities are built, with peace and mutual care and support as their foundation. The disempowerment driver of apathy and addiction is often caused by a complete lack of vision or purpose. Individuals have no focus or direction. There is conformity and disconnection. People tell lies and are hopeless and helpless. In these environments, there is no strong or honest leadership, and a sense of apathy is everywhere. The solution to apathy, addiction, and a complete lack of focus is vision, leadership, and purpose. People with vision have focus and direction. There is space for self-expression. People have freedom of choice and action. In these environments, you find strong societal leadership and an abundance of innovation and new ideas. The disempowerment driver of ignorance happens when people stop questioning and just accept what they are told. There is often judgment of others and an overwhelming sense of dishonesty. In these environments, there is no understanding of individual rights. People are judged for being different. There is no knowledge or insight, no monitoring, measurement, or evaluation, and harmful cultural practices and corruption thrive. The solution to ignorance is knowledge, daily questioning of the status quo, learning, insight, and a search for the truth. These are environments that prioritize learning and education, transparency, and support of diversity and individual rights. There is monitoring, measurement, and evaluation so that people know what the truth is, and there is an openness to new ideas. The disempowerment driver of neglect is driven by non-delivery, inaction, and a complete lack of care. In these environments, children have no access to health, quality education, housing, or service delivery in general. There is no social support or care for those in need. The solution to neglect and inaction is to take action. Action is about delivery, possibility, sustainability, and caring about the future. These environments are driven by a focus on the future, on the possibility that future can bring, on planning and access for everyone, on service delivery, and on ensuring sustainable solutions for future generations. So to return to our objective for this exercise, start by ordering your high priority challenges in a list from most critical to least. Now identify your top 1, 3, or 5 priorities and just work with these at the start so that you don't get overwhelmed. You may want to group some of these challenges together as they may relate to each other. Then identify the disempowerment drivers that you think are creating these challenges. Finally, identify the opposite empowerment drivers that you can use to create real and meaningful change in your community. This template should help you and your team or community to develop an empowered strategy for change. Start with your child protection challenges. Try to describe these in terms of how they show up in your community to ensure that they will be understood by a broader audience. Then identify the disempowerment drivers that you think are creating these child protection challenges. Again, try to describe the drivers in the context of your community and what you've actually observed happening. Finally, identify the opposite empowerment drivers that will ensure meaningful behavior change. Try to develop your empowerment drivers into a tangible program, campaign, or specific actions that you intend to take forward. Here we can see how some community workers in a hospital have mapped their high priority yellow cards to the purple disempowerment drivers and then placed the opposite white empowerment cards above each. Once you have mapped everything out, you now need to start solving your child protection challenges in an empowered way. In this example, a group of children identified that their biggest challenge was that their teachers emotionally abused them verbally in class. They discussed what they thought was driving this and decided that it was the disempowerment driver of abuse, specifically that the teachers were angry, under pressure, and often used violence to solve conflict. Their solution was an in-class campaign called Love Your Teacher and Your Teacher Will Love You. They decided that if they modeled using love to solve conflict, their teachers would learn from their empowered approach and would in turn stop verbally abusing them. The key to this exercise is learning an empowered approach to solving child protection challenges, starting with identifying the problems, then the disempowerment drivers, and finally using the empowerment drivers to create interventions that will drive meaningful behavior change. Thanks for watching. For more information, visit couragechildprotection.com. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to our Courage channel. Stay strong and take courage.